Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Youth Factor TV. I am your host, Jared Elrod. And guys, I just have to say, you are awesome. When I first started YouthFactor.us and even this show, I really didn't know what was going to happen with it. I just kind of felt like it was something I was supposed to do. I knew how to do video stuff from my old days in youth ministry and business stuff, and I just kind of felt led like I needed to start a blog about youth ministry, and I kind of figured it'd be mostly just showing how to do marketing stuff for churches and youth pastors. Started, God's taken it in a whole different direction, and you guys, your response has been phenomenal, so I thank you guys so much. Your responses and your comments and your support has been amazing. So with that, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so first a little background. This was back when I was up in Northern California in a small mountain retirement town. And I was warned when I was first interviewing for this position by people who knew of it that it was a tiny dead town, not like dead. I mean, it just for youth ministry. It was not a happening place, and that it was basically retirement, and it's kind of a druggy town. And good luck if I took it. Was essentially. So, anyways, I jumped in, and for the first like 13 or 14 months being there, I was just trying my hardest with almost no results. I mean, I started off and there was like 2 or 3 kids my first couple weeks, and after over a year, I built it up to a whopping 9 students consistently. 8 or 9 students every single week. For like 6 months, I was on this streak, and I kept trying to break 10, and I could not do it. I mean, my mentor even talked about how, like, told me I should even offer to pay a student just to break that 10, hit 10, and then I could, move on from there with the momentum. Everything I tried, I would have students message me and say, hey, I'm bringing a friend tonight. And I'd say, yes, we're going to hit 10. We got that, they're bringing a friend. We're going to have 10. And what would happen? 2 other students would not show up, and we'd have a low, or 3 students, and we'd have like a low night. It was so discouraging. I did not know what to do. Okay, so what did I end up doing? Well, here's the thing. I realized the problem was I was building the youth ministry based on what I wanted and what I thought was going to be the best way to reach them. For example, I was trying to do a lot of online stuff. I mean, that was kind of like my thing. I came from, film guy, and back in the day when YouTube, before Google even owned it, I was, doing YouTube video, like putting short films and stuff on YouTube and trying to build up like a film studio. Back when there was MySpace, I was killing it with BizDev on MySpace, and we're growing our film studio and making connections and getting views. And then so I thought, hey, I'll do something similar. I'll use Facebook. That's, I had just gotten a Facebook account a few months before, and I was like, we'll do this thing right. Problem was, with it being a retirement town, there wasn't a lot of, internet. Hadn't really, they had the internet, but it was slow, and it just wasn't what they did. I mean, they were more into, hunting and skating and other things, and it kind of flopped. So all the online stuff I was doing, ironically, the one thing that did work out pretty well, we did start an online youth show. Hello, and welcome to Geek Church. I, of course, as always, am Jared Elrod, and I am accompanied by
Jeff Thun.
And it did pretty well in the next town. I had a youth pastor friend that most of his kids watched it, and that town it was starting to take off in. But we were just struggling to get things going in our town. And the problem is, again, I was doing it off of what I wanted, what I thought was cool, and what I wanted to spend my time. Here's the thing. I was thinking, if I'm going to be spending time away from my family, down at the church, building out ministries and spending time with students, I want it to be on my terms. So it was all about, I built out a film studio, we had the green screen, lights, everything. It was all based around what I was wanting to do, and fortunately, that didn't really work out so well. So finally, I stopped being stupid, and I let go of what I wanted to do and the legacy I wanted to build and all the dreams I had. And I really started praying and opening my eyes to what it was I needed to be doing. Okay, now here's the thing. Several months before, I had been coming in contact with skate kids. Actually, more on a negative. I actually a few times had to call cops on skater kids. There were some issues. The board was wanting me to really uphold certain rules they'd had. And there was tension between me and these skate kids in town. And I started to know who they were. I mean, you only have to call the cops on a kid once or twice before you start to know him by name. And there was some drama there. And I had like in the back of my head this idea that like there were these kids that being reached. But like I was thinking like for someone else, because I was the media guy. And I had, you know, I was going to reach the nerdy and the geeky kids. And I mean, I was building relationships with students who were into comics and programming and trying to build up a film team. And I was like, you know, someone needs to reach these skate kids because they have no place to go and they need to stop coming on our parking lot and getting me in trouble with the pastor and the board and me being the one to sent out to chase them off. So it hit me. One day I was walking with my intern and I made the comment to him, you know, if we shifted gears and focused on really reaching these skate kids, our youth numbers, like our youth ministry and the numbers and just everything would just explode. And he looked at me and asked like the most basic, plain question ever. It's embarrassing that I hadn't thought of this. And he said, why don't we? I gave him some reason of whatever and brushed it off. But on the inside, I was thinking, as we were still walking, I was like, yeah, why don't we? It's something I'd been really wrestling with. I had the idea. I saw the need was there. And I was just worried. Like, I even felt like God was maybe speaking to me on this. But I was worried to step out because I wasn't a skater. I'd never been a skater. I mean, even when I was a kid, I was, you know, rollerblades. And, like, rollerbladers and skaters, like, they didn't get along. And so I had never known skate kids. I didn't know how to build a skate ministry. You know, like, I was at a loss. And so I knew how to build a media team. And I'd done that in the past and had been very successful. And I was trying to recreate that success. So I was scared to step out into what I thought God was calling me into. And I knew there was a need. But I had no idea of where to begin. And I was worried. So after several months of just really praying about it and really just looking and studying and thinking and looking at the need, I'm talking to parents, all kinds of stuff. It just really hit me that these kids needed to be reached out to. At the same time, I was really looking into business stuff. Like I'd always done film stuff and been trying to build it from that like business point of view. But like the whole internet entrepreneur thing was starting to catch my attention. And so I was learning the concept of niching down, you know, picking a niche and then really focusing on them to grow your business. And it kind of hit me. This concept of niche church hit me. And I was like, what if I really just focused on these kids who need help? Like, what would happen? So finally, after just weeks and weeks and weeks, way too many weeks of not taking action, I finally said, you know what, God? I give up. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it your way. So we did a few things. We really shifted gears. I already mentioned the web show, and that had moderate success. But the other things that really worked out really well is we built out like a restaurant, a sandwich shop that had energy drinks, candy, food, amazing tri-tip and barbecue chicken sandwiches. We had foosball, ping pong, pool table. We had like Xbox, like an actual Xbox, which was like a novelty because, you know, 360 was the big thing. And so it was like the fact that we had old Xbox games, and one of them, a kid donated and it had been like modded, and it had like tons of old arcade games like Ninja Turtles, X-Men, like those kind of old games. And so like the kids flocked, and we were open twice a week. School was closed campus, but the principal, because we shared property, well not like obviously we owned our own property, but we shared a fence, he would let the underclassmen come over, and the upperclassmen had, you know, they could already leave. But underclassmen was closed campus, let them come over, opened it as like part of the campus, and it took off after a few months. And we were having, you know, 200, 250 kids within these like a few hour period between the two lunches, twice a week. So that really took off, and we put a lot of effort in. Okay, this doesn't look like youth ministry, and it's not like, doesn't fit into our programs. And it was really hard to track the numbers because, I mean, it was two of us. Sometimes we had volunteers, but the volunteers got kind of overwhelmed pretty quickly. So it was me and my intern. Luckily, he was a full-time intern who lived upstairs, so he didn't have a lot of choice other than help me. And we were just going at this thing. And it was like, talk about hustling. We didn't even know, like it was crazy. 2 days a week, and then all the prep time in between. I was driving down the hill to get supplies for it. Did not look like, I mean, it looked like we were running a restaurant. But the thing is, we had those 200 to 250 kids in there every single day, twice a week, to build relationships with. So once we got all the food and stuff made, we would go and hang out with them, and we built a ton of relationships, even though it was so outside of the box of what we thought youth ministry was. Okay, and lastly, one of the biggest things we did, and that let us build a lot of relationships where we knew a ton of the people on the high school campus, but then to really go in that whole like niche church ideas, we really focused on these skate kids I was talking about. And we built a skate park. So a little history in this town, way back in the day before these kids could actually skate when they were little kids, there was a rickety old wood skate park. Some kid broke a leg, it got torn down, there's all kinds of conflict between it, and this new generation of kids were wanting somewhere to skate. Now this town, you may think like, go skate. Well, this town was on a ridge, and so like literally the town is like this. And so like, it goes up a hill. And everything was unlevel. There was only 2 sidewalks in the entire town. One of them was paved in asphalt, and I couldn't even hardly walk on it in my flip-flops. It was so gravelly that the sharp rocks would poke through my flip-flops, so there's no way they were skating. There was 2 places in town. There was a shopping center up the hill, which they got the cops calling them every single time because there was a dozen businesses who shared that parking lot. They called every single time. And there's our church. When I first got there, one of my jobs, as crazy as this may sound, was to run the kids off because they didn't want them skating on the property for multiple reasons. One of which is insurance liability issues, but then just they figured they were riffraff type, you know, didn't want that around. That would bring in, I don't know, whatever they'd bring in. Okay, so my first step is I had to convince the board to let me do this. So I put together a proposal. Long story short, we got it approved. I built the ramps. I purposely only worked on the, I felt this was pretty clever. I only worked on the ramps during, like, I would start and pull all the stuff out, all the wood and tools and stuff out, right, like a half hour, 45 minutes before school would get out. And we had the high school right here by our property, and the junior high elementary school like down, where not all of them, but a good percentage of those kids would have to walk up the hill, and they'd cut through a parking lot, and then all the high school kids would either walk through down this way to where they lived, or wait for the parents to pick them up. So I purposely would work on these ramps every day for like a week or 2, right when they were getting out of school. So they'd walk through and be like, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm building a ramp. They're like, why? And I'd say, I'm building a skate park. No way. And so I'd have this relationship. I started building relationships with these kids to the point that when the day I launched, the word had already gotten out, but the buzz had already gotten out. And it was phenomenal. Our very first day, we ended up having like 20 kids. And so I went from like, I couldn't hit 10 to like all of a sudden we had like 19 or 20, something like that, kids that very first day. And it continued. And then I built more ramps. I built more relationships. We got just involved with these kids' lives. Neither me or my intern knew anything about skating. We never started skating. We never tried to pretend like we were skaters. We just loved on these kids. We spent time with them. We gave them rides. We fed them. Everything we could do to build that relationship. And we ended up having dozens of kids give their hearts to the Lord on altar calls. We had, like I said, we got to like, we were running a good 30, 35. We'd hit as much as 40 every week. And it was crazy. We were just making lemonade and hot dogs, setting up Christian music, and the ramps, and then we were there to hang out with them. And at first they wanted nothing to do with us. They just wanted to use our ramps. But as time went on, they would start to hang out with us, and they would go to take their break from skating, and they'd come over and talk to us. And then that evolved into life issues they would want to talk about. And then they would begin to trust us a little bit, and so we'd give an altar call, and they'd be like, I can't tell you how many times I heard a student say, I have never heard like the Bible and Christianity explained that way, and it made sense to me. And yeah, I want to become a Christian. I want to know more about Jesus. We had a lot of fun. We lost a lot of sleep, and we spent a lot of days moving ramps, but we loved it. I wouldn't trade those days for anything, and we learned a ton. The main thing is this whole niche church idea. Now, you may be thinking, okay, but there's more kids in the community than just skate kids. Are you just turning away all the other kids? A couple things. One, I knew full well we can't reach everyone, right? There was a dozen other youth groups all like in town, and different ones were reaching, you know, different kids. I mean, obviously you have different types. We were primarily reaching the skate kids, but here's the cool thing. Once we start getting the junior high and high school boys who were the skaters, who, because so many kids in town were skaters, they were primarily the cool kids. Guess what happens when all the cool kids show up to your youth ministry? That's right, everyone else wants to show up too. So we got all the guys to show up, all the cool guys, and then so all the girls started showing up. After about a month, they started realizing this is where they're all hanging out and they're skating. So the girls started showing up because they wanted to try to talk to the guys in between skating. And when you have all the girls show up, everyone else shows up. All the other girls who want to be as cool as these cool girls, all the other kids who want to be around, whether it be because of the cool guys or the girls, whatever. We ended up getting pretty much everyone who would show up and hang out. And we went from almost a year and a half where we couldn't get more than 9 to, in a very short period of time, we were breaking 40. In fact, funny story, we had an all-night party. And we had a couple bands, because at this point we'd gotten invited to set up a table at city events. We were getting pulled into, they had council meetings where they were the parents had band together and created a council that was trying to get a skate park built. Well, I was asked to come to all the meetings, so I got really involved in the community. So then I go to have an all-night party. And it's a New Year's all-night party, a lock-in. I'm just thinking like, oh, okay, we'll probably get like 20 kids that'll show up to this thing. So we planned for it, we got pizza, we knew a couple bands at this point from these different city events we've been going to, and we built some relationships with them, and so we had a couple bands come out, and the night of, I remember, we're getting the pizzas ready, and we'd advertised that, to our youth kids that there'd be food. Well, so many people showed up. I think we ended up having 60 people there, and I had planned pizzas. I think I planned it for about 30, thinking we'd have 20 and that would be enough to last throughout the night. So I'm cooking these pizzas. I'm like, there's no way these pizzas are feeding everyone. And I remember having to postpone that. I had students going, hey, where's the pizza? I was like, yeah, we're going to have to do that after. So, because we had that kind of concert session. And then luckily, a lot of the parents who had come left. And then there were some students who left. Mostly it was parents and stuff who had left. And so we still didn't have enough pizza for all the kids who ended up staying. I think we ended up having 40 students that night who stayed the whole night after the concert portion. Because we had it billed as 2 things, the concert, and you stick around, we'll have a little, some dead time, and then for the transition, and then we'll start the all-night party. We ended up having 40 students or something like that for the all-night party, and it was crazy. Okay, let's end this episode not just on a funny story, but on some takeaways that you can use for your own youth ministry. First off, you want to evaluate. Step number 1 is to evaluate. What needs are there in your community that you can reach out and try to fill? Who do you feel like God's calling you to reach? I understand that, it's easy to say, oh, everyone. Problem is, when you try to reach everyone, sometimes you end up reaching no one. So, specifically based off of who you are, your DNA, the needs of your city, who you feel like you can communicate to the best, and all that kind of stuff. Where is kind of your calling and all that? What is God specifically calling you to do? Are you going to end up being strong in drama and performing arts? And you're in a suburban area that is really big into arts, and you're going to draw people because of that? Or are you out in the country and maybe you're going to start up a monthly hunting, a men's hunting group, and you're going to grab a bunch of guys and go duck hunting or quail hunting or something? You have to know your area. You have to know what God's calling you to and specifically what you need to do. That's number 1, evaluate. That kind of goes in with the whole niche ideas. Find your niche. Okay, step 2 is going to be to pray. I can't stress this point enough because naturally as a youth pastor, you probably are going to have so many ideas. You're going to see all the needs. You're going to want to reach all of them. You're going to have 100,000 ideas on ministries you can create, outreaches you can do, discipleship programs you can do. You really need to pray and say, not just pick one. Not what's the cool thing or the thing that you think will be the most fun. I was trying to do in the beginning, I was trying to do media because that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't until I spent a lot of time praying and evaluating these first 2 steps that I came to the conclusion that I needed to reach out to the skate kids and do skate ministry. Okay, and the third thing you need to do is act. You have to get up and take some action. Like I mentioned in the story, it took me months. I think of the impact we could have had if we'd started this 6 months earlier, but I drug my heels. I wasn't sure. I was worried. All the things I mentioned. So you have to actually act. So once you figure out who it is you feel like you're called to reach, pray about it, get the specifics, confirm everything with God so you're not just running off on your own ideas like I was doing unsuccessfully. And then third, you actually have to do it, because it doesn't matter what God has told you and promised you to do. You actually have to do it. Like Moses had to go. Like God didn't just give him the dream and then the people were set free. Like he had to go and act. He had to put in the work. And it wasn't easy. Like I'm sure he wanted to give up like every single day. He did it. He put in the work. He got through the hard part. And he came out the other side successful because God backed him up. Because God called him to do something. He put the action in. He followed through, was faithful. And God showed up to bless him. Same thing that happened to us. God put something on our heart. Both me and my intern were feeling after we'd been talking and praying that this is what we were going to do. We took the step. It was scary. Honestly, we didn't think the board and the pastor were going to approve it because of the past history stuff with the tension between the skate kids and the church. We stepped out there. Everything went through. It was, I'm not going to lie, it was so hard. I mean, I remember there were days where my skate kids got blamed for everything in the city for a period of time. And I was getting phone calls at all hours of the night and the morning telling me I needed to get down to the church and deal with my kids and all this kind of stuff. We got blamed for everything. It was stressful. The ramps were really heavy. And you know what? In the beginning, people wanted to volunteer and help. It got to the point where it was just me and my intern. And he's like half my size and like weighs nothing. So it was me, my intern, and a dolly trying to move these huge ramps every day because we didn't have them. We couldn't leave them out. We'd have to put them in a garage. And I'm not going to lie. There were days, like we would look at the weather because if it was raining, we wouldn't set them up. We would just do things inside. And there were days that we were looking at the weather app saying, God, please let it rain today. We don't have the strength to set these ramps up and then put them away and deal with everything. We're just exhausted. But you know what? God sustained us. He brought us through it. And because of it, we had great success. Not just numbers, but with, like I said, we had several dozen kids give their life to the Lord. And we were able to make some great inroads. We had some of our girl volunteers who made some great relationships with some of those girls who just showed up to meet the guys. And they were able to connect and do some great counseling and discipleship with them as well. And God blessed the entire thing. So that is, I guess, it for this episode. Hopefully you got something out of it. It's a little more lighthearted than the rah-rah kind of thing from last time. Hopefully my last episode was more encouraging and wasn't offensive. I think so based off the comments. It seemed to be taken pretty positively. Again, thank you guys so much. Please, if you're watching this, please help me get the word out. Like, again, I just thought I was going to put out this like secret blog I felt like God was calling me to, and I really didn't put a lot of attention. I kind of didn't want to in the beginning because I had so much going on. I was like, I'll do it just because I feel like I need to. Same thing with the skate park, and it's taking off, and I'm hearing amazing stories of, you know, the encouragement that these episodes and some of the articles have been, and some of the tips you guys have gotten from stuff. So that's been a blessing to me. So keep up the comments and the shares. Also, if you're watching this, chances are you've watched me ramble on for however many minutes it's been now. You probably enjoyed at least a little bit of it, so why don't you go ahead and subscribe up, and that way you can get notifications of new episodes, and maybe share what we're doing with a friend. Yeah, that'd be cool.